Hello and welcome to another episode of Get Me Someone Who Can Sell. I'm your host, Olga Pishnyanka, the owner of Revenue Hire. And today I have a treat for y'all. I have a guest, Ben Slaughter, who is Director of Sales at Covideo. Ben's background is not very typical. That's why I was very excited to have him on. Usually we have salespeople who've been salespeople forever and ever come on, but Ben has spent years wearing operations hat at Amazon, Morales Group, and other companies. And then he moved over to sales at Covideo, where he's been building a sales team, coaching a sales team, and kind of building the sales team and moving on with that. So, Ben, thank you for being here. I really appreciate. I know you're a very busy man. You've got a lot going on, but I thought that all of my audience would benefit from learning from you, kind of what you're doing, how are you building sales operations, coming from a very different background than most people that I usually have on the show. And so with all of that, another thing I wanted to mention about Ben before I give him the floor is their marketing stuff at Covideo is amazing. So basically, the way I understand this, you guys help dealerships sell more by using video with their customers, right? And so when I was looking at your marketing, you focus a lot on how you help your customers. So you've got different numbers that you use, how you help them win. And I thought that was very interesting that you didn't really talk much about yourselves, but really what results your clients are getting with using your service. So all of that said, welcome.
Thank you.
And happy to have you here.
Thanks, Olga. Thanks. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be
Did
here.
I also teased a little bit. Ben is also one of our dear clients. So those of you who are watching and you're an indie and you're looking for an executive role, he could be your future boss. So another opportunity to see what we've got going on. A little plug here for recruiting as well. So Ben, did I miss anything important before we kind of dive in that you wanted me to address?
No, I appreciate that very generous intro, and I don't think anything necessarily that you missed that was on my mind for sake of starters. I would say that the last comment you made is honestly like an essence of sales. You talked about, I think, the notion of that, how we're focused on what our customer wants and getting things done for our customer, which is frankly like the way sales should be, right? Is ultimately like what is important to you, what do you need, right, for purposes of advancing your business, and let me focus the conversation and my efforts there.
So. Yeah, because I think the data is really cool. It looks like you're being used by over 3,500 dealerships, and the numbers they're using, you're very focused on how much you've improved the closing rate for your customers. So you like really going to the bottom of things. At least in your marketing, that was very clear that how are you helping. So I think this is a good example how marketing probably is helping sales, kind of maybe land more conversations. And, a lot of times there's this tug of war between marketing and sales. And in this case, I bet that's helpful to kind of put that messaging in front of your customers.
Yeah, 100%. We've got an excellent marketing team. They do a wonderful job of, I would say, supporting like sales enablement by not only like partnering with us, but more importantly, partnering with our customers to understand like what type of impact video is having in the context of their sales process, right? Yeah. And so, like as you had said earlier, Covideo, like our focus is helping our customers sell more with the leads they're already getting. Right. So it's about lead conversion, not in our case, lead conversion, not as much around lead generation. Yeah. But ultimately, the marketing team, as you had kind of mentioned, has done a great job of engaging with customers to understand the nature of those results and being able to communicate those results in a meaningful way for us to share with others to demonstrate.
And then show the results of how you have helped others with Correct. Similar types of things.
Correct.
So those of you joining us for the first time, this is the show where I interview sales leaders, sales individual contributors, so you can see what that sounds like, a really solid salesperson and sales leader, and kind of B, what kind of things they really talk about. So when you interview a sales leader or a salesperson next time for a company, you understand what questions you may be asking, and more importantly, what kind of things we're going to be talking about that a good sales talent should be talking about, which is numbers, proof, and other things, not just wishy-washy things. So on that note, Ben, so you come from the operations background.
Yes.
And most sales leaders, they sort of raised to be sales leaders from being in sales. Now, that's a double-edged sword. A lot of times, amazing individual contributors don't translate into being amazing sales managers. And then they kind of go back to being individual contributor. How did you've been in operations, you've done all kinds of things. What made you go, I'm going to go join sales? Like
how did I get here?
About that, and kind of what's your hero's journey story into sales?
Yeah. How did I get here? So, without boring your audience, I'll try to kind of tell that story fairly quickly. And interestingly, a salesperson was a big part of that journey. I will say I started my career in sales a long time ago, right? I was a sales rep in a territory for about 3 years. And it was a little bit after that experience that I pivoted into operations. And as you alluded to, I was in operations leadership roles from, goodness, like 2007 until really now, until I joined Covideo. Interestingly, again, I'll tell you, there was a person that was instrumental to this pivot, as well as like a life change. I was served as a plant manager at a manufacturing facility here in Indianapolis. We went through a scenario where we were consolidating operations, a plant being moved from Kansas to Indianapolis, and essentially starting that operation from scratch or from the ground here in Indianapolis. And in that exercise, amongst a number of vendors we were working with at the time, I had created relationship with a few different staffing vendors that helped support staffing up our operation. One of those I became friends with a lot of the folks that helped support our operation at that moment. One of those individuals who did an excellent job as a salesperson for me, listening to what we needed and addressing those needs. Long story short, when our family was in Baltimore and made a personal family decision, move back to Indianapolis, ironically, that individual came into play. That individual helped move me to Morales Group in a different operations context. And then a few years later down the line, that individual helped connect me to Covideo when I said, hey, I'm moving back to Indianapolis. You got your ear to any opportunities there in Indianapolis. And when I moved, when we made that move to Indy, I was specifically looking to step out of an operational context at that point in time and to step into a mode of working to grow something.
Yeah.
Right. Which Covideo is and has been over the last 2+ years in a very focused and aggressive growth mode. And so I had the opportunity to come on board and be part of that activity with Covideo.
Well, what a fascinating story. I mean, interestingly here, the change that you've made, so you've sold before, but then you were in operations for a while. And then somehow you've landed a job of being a sales leader where you haven't sold before at that company. So
Correct.
how do you convince the hiring managers to interview you and give you a shot at this? Because that is a lot of times, normally people wouldn't even look at the resume if you haven't really,
Fair enough. No, very, very fair. Yeah, it's a great question. And I will also credit the individual I was alluding to earlier, Adam Schultes, great friend and colleague. And
there was some networking involved, which is
that's right. There was
right.
networking involved, and funny enough, he knew that for this specific role, they actually were interested in looking for someone who has been in operations leadership capacities, because I guess to the kind of the point of our conversation here together today, we do bring a bit of a different lens, right? Yeah. Where it is a little more process focused, and perhaps more data
Yeah.
data focused than might be common in a lot of sales leaders, right? So I don't certainly don't want to generalize like sales leaders, but from an operations background, there is a significant focus on data. There's a significant focus on process and how process impacts our results. And at that time, Covideo was actually specifically looking for somebody with a bit of an atypical sales background or atypical background to step into this particular role.
Kudos to them for being open and not just kind of thinking, oh, we only need this on the resume, and then we don't want to get out of that thing. Yeah. So, well, thanks for sharing that story, because a lot of times people are trying to move into sales, and you just demonstrated how you do that without kind of coming from that background. So you spend years hearing pitches from salespeople, right? When you were in operations. So what are some of the things, so for those listening, what are some of the things that made somebody really good versus somebody that was not that great? So in other words, what can we learn from you if those of you who have to sell to operations, which is probably a lot of us, what can we learn from you? Like what makes somebody good versus what makes somebody bad?
Yeah, that's a good question. And just to be upfront, I don't think I'm going to say anything necessarily revelatory to your audience, right?
Because I think repetition is the queen of everything. So let's go there.
It's very simple, right? Like to be like blunt, I think the first bit is a good salesperson. Like when I was in the seat of the customer, the effective salespeople were listening to like, or listening to and or observing like my needs, right? Like, in fact, the friend that I referenced earlier, we engaged with that company for staffing as he walked through the operation with me at a certain point and was like asking, hey, so what's happening here? Like he was in general, like trying to understand the nature of our operation. And there was a significant production need that we had at that moment in time, where, like, just to put it simply and quickly, we were getting about 10% production out of a certain machine than of what we needed. And he asked, is this something that, like, can you show me this machine? Can you, like, what happens? Is this something that can be done by hand? Which at that time, yes, it could. And as he like listened and observed, he like, they had a solution like that could address our need. It could produce what we needed by hand while also not just throwing a whole bunch more like labor for us to manage. Right. And so when he presented us with that solution, it was a perfect fit at a perfect time to address the need that we had. And so all that to say, like, he did a great job of like listening to understand the nature of like what mattered to at that time to me, to my business, to the essentially like the things we were trying to get done day to day. He listened. And he also wasn't specifically focused on trying to fit his square peg into our round hole. He was focused first on like understanding our need. And if they could address it, fantastic. But if they couldn't, trying to connect me with individuals in his sphere that could address the need. So all of that to say, the focus was on me as the customer and what we needed for our business, and not like what I'm trying to sell, what I have in my little bag of goodies and what I'm trying to sell.
Okay. Well, hold on. For you, this could be common sense, right?
100%.
So for somebody listening, this, because you have to pay attention to this and that and qualification and upfront contract and like all this, like in the sales head, there's all this stuff going on. So for you, and I bet when you interview salespeople now, you kind of pretend putting yourself in those shoes again. Like, how would your customer feel when that salesperson is interviewing with you? Because now you sort of understand what that felt like when they listened versus when they didn't listen, when they asked questions versus when they didn't ask questions. So for you, this may be natural. For most people, it's kind of really important, right? When you're interviewing a salesperson, imagine that you were the decision maker at some point, trying to see if you can buy from this, because there's a lot of charmers and a lot of people who will come in and they'll tell you everything you want to hear. But at the end of the day, it's this kind of conversation. So on the other side, what made you want to go and be like, oh gosh, I never want to talk to you ever again? I bet you had those stories too.
That's a good question. So to be honest, like I probably just didn't give them the time of day if I like, and that sounds unkind, but I just like, the reality is, to your point, we're all busy. We all have like things that we're focused on. And so honestly, if there were a circumstance of a terrible salesperson, I probably just didn't give them time. Um, uh, so it's funny you ask. There's no particular story that sticks out of like a salesperson that was terrible. The good ones stick out because they did a great job of listening and trying to help us solve our problems.
Okay.
The one other thing that sticks out though, that I think is important to like call out, and also is reflective of good salespeople, is just, I think we often hear the phrase in a sales environment, it's like, it's a numbers game, right? But I had a couple instances stick out in my mind that I think really reflect that well. One was there was a different machine, like at a certain point in time, same context. It was the same circumstance where we moved the operation from Kansas to Indy. There was a different machine where we were, long story short, we were having issues with like a certain glue machine, right? And it was significantly disrupting our production. One day I'm out there like next to this machine, and this glue salesperson walks in. Like he had found his way into our production area, walks up and he introduces himself. And I was like, if you can help me fix this machine, we can talk about glue. And he could, like, ironically, like he walked in to the right person, the right day, right time, and he was able to help us solve an immediate problem. And so not only did we start engaging with them to like service our machinery, but we also started buying adhesives from them, right? And so that was an example of, he was playing the numbers game, and the numbers game was in his favor that time.
Yeah.
There was another scenario where same company but different role, I would get like peppered by an individual from a company that like we just didn't have the need. And so to your earlier question, like I never gave that individual the time of day. I never called him back. I never responded to an email, because that's the reality of sales, right? There's plenty of instances where it's not the right time. Like I don't have this need, and so I'm just not going to step into it. And ironically, when I moved from that company to Morales Group, I was at like it's called Wabash Valley Lean Network. It's a lean. It's a network all involved with like lean methodology in the manufacturing context. Signing into this event, I look at the name next to me, the person signing in. I said, I recognize your name. You used to call on me when I was in this role. And he looked at me and he said, I won. He said, I planted seeds. I planted enough seeds so that you would remember me, like when and if it ever became relevant, right? Which to me was like a really good reminder that there are so many instances in a sales seat where what we're doing is kind of the equivalent of junk mail, right? Most days, it's not going to be heard. It's not going to be responded to, right? But like the instance when somebody enters the market for whatever widget we're selling or whatever service is needed, like we want to be memorable, right? And so it's important that we do continue to plant those seeds and do other things that make us memorable when that customer enters the market.
See, this is gold. I mean, a lot of times, you try a couple of times, you give up, like, he's not interested. But then, 6-9 months, a year later, you never know, as long as you're not annoying about it. So it sounds like the bad ones, you filter them out quickly, because there are certain things that they've done early on where you just like, this person doesn't respect my time. They don't care. I don't want to pay attention, versus the other ones who've done this respectfully. And this conversation is, for some, maybe like, why are we talking about this? Because here's the deal. Technology these days makes spray and pray so easy that just technology for everything. AI is for everything. There's all So this kind of stuff is going to be more and more important, right? The human connection,
Yes.
caring about the other person, listening, asking questions, curiosity. I always say curiosity is going to be number one desired trait going forward, because if you're not curious, just get out of sales right now, because it's not
Sure.
going to, those who are will win anytime. So very fascinating. Thanks for sharing all of this, because that is, like I said, you've got this background that helps you. A lot of people who interview salespeople don't have that background. So they get bamboozled with everything else that doesn't have anything to do with how does this prospect feel when they're being sold to, right? So
Makes sense.
that's important. Now let's talk about building a sales team with an ops brain. So what do you think is the biggest thing that you brought from operations that the sales teams, maybe were missing, or maybe I don't know how big was the team when you first joined. If you were replacing anybody, if that was a new role. I don't know much about how your story at Covideo started, but kind of what do you think, or in general, what do you think sales teams are missing in general that they can borrow from operations?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like my mind kind of goes to a few different places. All right. And I want to be clear, like, I don't think that what I say here necessarily, like, not that like all sales teams are missing this.
Yeah.
It's just like the nature of, like, I think the way my mind operates and that I operate in operations, it kind of lends itself, or I brought it here, right? I think in some regard, structure and process, right? And that can mean a few different things. On a macro level, one of the things that, like, I did to help create structure in the context of our sales team was we had historically, through our existence, right, have not operated in a territory structure. And there's some value to that, right? There's also, like, what we identified as, I would say, just gaps, right?
Yeah.
We were consistently not engaging a significant portion of, like, available market. We also, even though there was a significant portion of available market not being engaged on a regular basis or at all, we'd find ourselves, like, tripping over ourselves in the context of certain elements of the market, right? And so those dynamics would at times lead to, I'll just use the term infighting, right? Not real inviting, but just like tiffs over, is this yours or mine, or otherwise. And so for a variety of reasons, we built a structure of, we used data and built a structure of territories that I think helped give team members clarity of, like, their slice of this is my pond, right? And with that clarity, I can now engage on a consistent basis, get to know my market, and like, build strategy around, like, how I engage my market. I think within that as well, we built, like, structure and process through, like, different reports that gave them, I would say, different bird's eye views of their territory that enabled them to build strategy, right? So it kind of, as we know, like a certain pond, there's a lot of different sizes of fishes, and different categories and things of that nature that influence and change the way we want to engage. And so we provided a variety of reports that help them to segment and determine, like, the most meaningful way to engage with their respective markets, right? So that was a way we brought structure. I think in terms of process, right? So it's interesting. I had this conversation with one of my team members earlier today, right? In a sales environment, there is a lot of similarity to the nature of, like, in a production environment, I've got a sales order that has to ship at the end of the month, and I have like, what that means is I have to allocate certain resource to achieve that sales order by the end of the month. And if I get off track, if I don't produce enough widgets today, I need to figure out a way to make that up. right? I need to like make more tomorrow, or I need to do overtime, or like I need to make it up if I need to still hit that deadline at the end of the month, right? Without moving the goalposts. Same applies like in a monthly or quarterly or annual basis for a sales team. Like we've got a quota to achieve. We have a goal that we need to results we need to hit within a certain time frame, and we've got pipeline metrics like based on like the law of averages that give us insight to what we need to do each day, each week, etc., to get to that place. And if I don't see that traction today, right, it's not like the numbers don't change tomorrow, right? I need to still figure out a way to make these numbers at the top of my funnel work in order to get to this result at the end of the month, the quarter, the year.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's like an important parallel between operations and sales is like we still have a number of widgets that we have to produce in a given day. And if I don't get there at the end of today, how am I going to make it up? Because the math still has to math, right? So there's a discipline like in most operational contexts. Folks might know the term like Gemba or Gemba walk, or they might hear the term like one of the environments I worked in, we used the term DDS, daily direction setting. But the concept is every day, right? It's a discipline in many operational contexts, manufacturing facilities, distribution facilities, et cetera. It's a discipline where like every day, sometimes it's every shift. We have goals.
Yeah.
Right. We have goals for like safety, people, quality, cost. We have goals. Right. And I either hit it or I don't. Right. If I hit it, like you'll see Gemba boards in so many different environments where if I hit the goal, I'm green. Yay. We all want to see green. Right. If I don't, I'm red. And if I'm in the red, like the discipline is I need to like we convene at a board and all right, so what's the plan to get green today? Right.
Yeah.
And that is a discipline that's like, again, every day, every shift in many operations. And while I don't actually have a Gemba board in our sales context, like it's a concept that we practice in certain ways, like throughout our week. Right. Where like the team understands that like we need to be seeing certain traction toward like, in our funnel to get to the results we're trying to achieve. And if I was red yesterday, what am I doing differently today? What am I changing? What support do I need? Right. It's not just always about like, me as a person. Sometimes there's a process dynamic. Sometimes we might need to support someone in a different way. Right. But in general, like what we can't do is continue to string along red days thinking that we're going to get the result we're aiming for.
Right. Magical. No magical thinking that it will magically get better at the end of the month. So sounds like you've given people ownership when you first came in. So like territory split. So now you have certain things that you're responsible for. So there's no more chasing different fish all around the country or whatever. However, that made sense territory wise. Then you brought from operations the consistency discipline approach, where if every day you keep doing the steps, kind of like football training, like my son plays football, it's off season, but man, they're still training every day. Right. So like they are not taking, and I know football is very competitive in Texas, but they are doing this every single day. They're working out, they're doing things, and that's important to them. So they're not going to be sleeping for half a year. So the same thing here, consistency and discipline is important. So which could be boring in sales, right? It's not the shiny things we're talking about, but that's what makes it successful at the end of the month. Now, when you first stepped your foot in Covideo, was there anybody like, how do you look at it? Like you walk in and you go, okay, I got to improve ABC or X, Y, and Z. Do you have like a framework that you use? Do you look at what the result we're trying to accomplish? How do I build it backwards? how did you build this playbook from the operational sort of set of eyes?
Hmm. So I guess I'll always start. You use the term like I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but I guess if in any environment I step into, like, what's our goal, right?
Mhm.
Because I do think that like the important like an important fundamental to achieving anything in any context is where are we going? What are we trying to
Mhm.
accomplish, right? So I'll always start there, right? Like what are we trying to accomplish? And I'll also always start with like let's look at our team, right? Like look at the nature of our players and the talent that we have, the different strengths that we have, and then I guess from there, it's a matter of learning the processes in place, right? And through, I would say, both conversation and time and observation and listening, I think understanding the different like potential obstacles that are preventing us from, what things might be in our way,
Okay.
right, from achieving our goal, and what things do we need to do or change to help achieve our goal. I know I spoke that like very generally, but
Well,
that's
no, but at the end of the day, like there's no, it's not like some secret society book out there how you
no,
get the sales you want. It's like, and you'll be surprised how many times leaders don't have the goal set,
yeah,
right? So they're like they have some pie in the sky thing, but they don't really have like a plan of how do we get there, right? They expect the salesperson to figure that out or somebody else to figure that out, and it's like, well, I mean, salesperson. So some people are great at that, but most of the time they want a bullseye to kind of hit at, right?
100%. Like I think that's so fundamental in any leadership capacity, is very clearly articulating what's our vision, right? What are we trying to accomplish? What's our vision? And what does that mean for each of us individually in terms of our clear expectations? I think clear expectations in the form of expectations, as well as like clear goals and where are we trying to go, is
Right.
critical, right? And I think so much like I think that's just a really critical starting point in any context of like where are we trying to go. Interestingly, like Covideo, we have a phrase "to the moon." Ironically, that phrase within the context of the last 7 or 8 days, or wherever
Yeah.
we are with Artemis 2.
Oh my gosh,
It's kind of
beautiful pictures I saw.
right. Yeah, very cool pictures. Yeah, it's a very unique perspective. But we've had that phrase. It's kind of been a calling. It's like a phrase we use like over the last couple years, and it's in general, it's that like aspiration of doing big things. But one of the conversations I have with we had a new team member start yesterday. On a new team member's second day, I have like this slide deck that I review with every new team member on their second day, that is effectively like a level setting for my expectations of us, not just you, but all of us, right, as members of this
Mhm.
team, right? And one of those first things we talk about as a set kind of a vision is the notion of like being great, right? Like an example, and I've used this conversation piece with several different teams I've worked with in the past several years, right? Like I gotta get it, like who raised like who got up today and said I want to be mediocre, right? In any like in no matter what context you're in, right? Like whether you're a leader, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're a machine operator, a picker, whatever role you perform, nobody like wakes up and says, "Man, I really hope I'm mediocre at my job," or as a parent or as a spouse or anything, right? Nobody wants to aspires to be mediocre, and like that's a mentality that like I operate with, and frankly, I think we all do. I don't know if we often think about it and call it out though, but like as we think about vision casting for a team, right? I think that's some of where I start. Now it's about defining what does greatness look like, right? Like, but I think all of us, all of us presumably wake up and again, we think like, I don't want to be mediocre. I want to be great at whatever it is I'm doing. Now let's determine like what that means within the context of our company, our part within the company, and me as an individual. What does greatness look like?
What that's super important. You're touching something that when we recruit for sales leaders, we look for like kind of 5 competencies,
Okay.
right? So the first one is how well they can recruit, then motivation, how well they can motivate the team, which sounds like what you're talking about is that having that vision and what the greatness looks like and having expectation, but then more importantly, what does that mean to them too? Because this could mean
Yes.
one thing to you, it could mean something to them, but at least now you know what the disconnect is,
Yes.
right? So recruiting, motivating, then there's mentoring, kind of teaching them how to get to the results that you want them to get.
Okay.
And then there's coaching, right? Kind of
Okay.
giving that feedback on what the delta is versus
Yes.
what you want versus what they're doing.
Yes.
And then only then there's accountability. So like that's how when we look for sales leaders, we look for those 5.
Okay.
And funny enough, most managers don't know about motivation that much.
Okay.
And coaching people. They all want to hold them accountable. And I'm like, by the time you hold them accountable, you got to do like all the other things.
Yeah.
so
Fair enough.
you get the whip out, right? So for you, this is a beautiful explanation from operations standpoint, what motivation looks like. It's not some mumbo jumbo, pie in the sky thing. It's what is that? How do you motivate this person? Because everybody's unique and different. And sitting down with them and asking those questions.
Yeah, that's a great point. And interestingly, like, so I'll admit, like, I don't have a whole lot of ego. I am always open to feedback from my team of how I can be better, right? And one of the things I try to do is just reflect on like several instances through my journey with Covideo. I'm like, I need to be better at this, right? Mm-hmm. One of the changes I made about 6-ish months ago was I started having people, like, for sake of creating clarity and ownership over their own journey, started having individuals create like a personal success plan to effectively, like, once they started understanding like the nature of I would say our pipeline metrics and just the basics of our business, map out like where do you want to be when, and make it clear. But a big part of that personal success plan is like, give me a clear, like, what's your why? What is your carrot? Like, I understand you want to optimize your earnings and you want to hit your quota goals and things like that. That's good. We would have an issue if you didn't want to do that. Yeah. Right. But like in the spirit of motivation, at the end of the day, hitting quota is not going to motivate most people for a sustained amount of time, right? What's going to motivate is, my spouse and I want to move into a house by such and such a date and so on. Or like, I've had folks like within our contacts that they want to buy a ring, right? Or they want to go on a vacation or whatever it may be. Like, you need to be able to clearly define what is the why driving your current focus on achieving the results we're expected to achieve in the sales context.
So let me make sure I understand. So with everybody on your team, you have this conversation where for some people it could be like, oh, that's kind of personal or whatever. But I think it's actually beautiful because you're tying work, which we spend at least 40 hours every week, into something personal. Yes. So what would those conversations, what could they look like? Or how do you sit down with them and get them be comfortable opening up about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's fair. And to your point, like, if they don't want to share it, it's fine. It's when they are, like, obviously my intent in learning that information from them is for us to be able to continue to track to it, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you say, I want to come in and I want to crush it and I want to achieve X dollars by X time frame and so on, great. When you do that and you say, because I want to be able to put a down payment on a home by the fourth quarter of this year, then not only can we track to your progress, but we can say, like, we can tie it to like, hey, looks like we're on track to do what you're looking to do, or hey, we're not on track, right? Yeah. So what do we need to change? Are you still planning on like trying to make a down payment in the fourth quarter? What do we need to change to get there, right? So it ties it to something that like is more motivating than just the idea of achieving or not achieving results. Now, admittedly, like, I'm someone who there are many of us that like, I want to achieve the result because that's what I'm supposed to do. Right. That motivates me in itself. But like in the days when you're getting some gut punches or you're getting hung up on or whatnot, you still need that carrot behind the result itself, propelling you to go like, no, I want to do this for my family or whatever it may be.
Well, I remember when I was a young manager, and I was managing people who were older than me, the conversation when I was learning this from Sandler about having this kind of conversations about what matters to them, I remember feeling very awkward in the beginning because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm asking them to tell me something personal. But now this is actually the beautiful thing, because then you get to share the excitement when that's done too.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And be part of that, because they know that you care.
Right.
So what have you noticed? That's why I brought it up, because I remember how for me it was hard, but I was also in my early 20s, so maybe it was a lot of head trash that I had to address back then. But what did you notice since you started doing that? Anything?
Yeah, so good question. I think just more ownership in a sense, right? More ownership of ownership of the results, ownership of in some cases a little more fire behind like the action and urgency to achieve the results.
Yeah, I like that.
So unfortunately, it's not like I'm able to like give you some great data insight of like, man, since
who does not want to have more salespeople who have ownership of the results? Like, raise your hand. I want to know. No, this is really juicy. Thanks for sharing that, because that is a big mystery. I'm supposed to motivate them, but how? Rah, that's really not motivating. It's tying it to their goals, and that's a way to do it. So that's awesome.
It's interesting. I would say I've learned in this role more than any. And again, I've had the opportunity to be in like people leadership roles since like 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And this role more than any, I've learned like I can't motivate people. Like, sure, I can like, I can get up and give like, figure sometimes people will perceive them as compelling speeches and or like, cast a big vision and, do things to try to get people amped for like a moment. Right. But ultimately, like, as I think we all know in sales, right, like the day to day, like it is a discipline game. It is a drudgery. Like you gotta do the discipline of the stuff that positions you to like gain traction towards your goals. Right. And those are the instances where like, it's really critical that each person has that clear carrot and that clear why that's driving them in a daily basis. Cause I can't I can't make little games every day. Right.
No. I used to think that's what motivation was. That's what I used to think. And now I've learned that it's actually knowing and caring what their goal is and helping them achieve those goals by holding them accountable or mentoring them or whatever that could mean. So thanks for sharing what that looks like in the reality. We're not Tanya Robbins over here trying to, it doesn't last that long anyway, like 3 days. Anyway, let's talk about AI in sales. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm respectful of your time.
Yeah, great.
I think this is super juicy too. A lot of times, so AI is obviously making a lot of headlines these days, and more teams are using it. So I wanted to talk to you kind of, how are you guys using AI right now in your company, whatever you can share with us. What's your stack look like? What do you like? Let's start there. What's the stack looking like, and kind of why did you make those decisions?
There's two key AI resources that we utilize, and I'll kind of step through the different impacts and so on. One of them that we stepped into fairly recently, maybe within the last 6 to 8 months, it's called Yoodli, Yoodli, and it's actually like AI role play, which is great for our team in particular, like in the onboarding phase, to help individuals ramp with a level of consistency in the engagement and coaching, and also to let's be real. Like, so role play is really important. It's very effective in helping people to upskill and learn how to. I'm not sure, of course, all the sales environments of the folks that are in the audience right now, but like calling is just a big part of our business, outbound outreach, like on a regular daily basis, right? And like in that context, the way we start and navigate calls is like the most effective way that we can like essentially influence our sales results, right?
Right.
And but role play is awkward, right? Like it's awkward, right? Nobody
Awkward.
really enjoys it, right? And so one of the great things about Yoodli is it takes away an element of that awkwardness, because I guess for some odd reason we don't find it awkward role playing with an AI avatar, but
as often you as possible without feeling
right.
like being a jerk.
That's right. Yeah. But it's a great tool because it removes that element of awkwardness from role play, and it gives an element of consistency. So the way it operates is we can influence a variety of things about the avatar to kind of control, like how tough the avatar is, or kind of where it takes the conversation, or things of that nature. But ultimately, like, you're having a conversation on the phone, and that and you get like instant feedback that can help influence like the next time you call it, right? So it's a really good tool. It's been a great tool for our team in the onboarding process.
So, and then you as a manager get to watch or get the reports of some sort where it kind of shows you who is strong at what parts, or like it kind of gives you visibility.
We're able to get those reports. Yes, that is like available to us. That's correct.
And you can coach them if you need to coach them more.
Correct.
So that's called Yoodli, and is that the Lucian stuff? Is that their?
That's how we learned of it. Is through Lucian. It's like a Sandler AI tool.
Okay,
that's correct.
Gotcha. And then so that's one. That's an amazing. I used to hate role playing, but I still role play because that's the best way to learn. Yep. You don't want to make mistakes with prospects, right? You want to make
fair enough.
With AI. Now, what's the other thing that you said that you guys?
Gong is an important part of our tech stack, right? So Gong serves multiple purposes, right? So we can call out of Gong. We can create, and we do create and utilize like flows, or like a lot of us may know the term cadences, right? But like using like creating flows for kind of multi-pronged engagement with our customer over multiple days, right? So we use Gong for a variety of purposes. Gong also captures like our calls and our demos, right? So it serves a lot of purposes. The value of I would say the AI power of Gong is, I would say, fewfold. So one is it can kind of expedite the notion. It accelerates like sales intelligence, right? So one of the great things about Gong is it can very quickly just summarize a call, right? And share key insights, key reflections, action items, takeaways, things like that, right? So it can summarize a call that we can use for a variety of purposes. Sometimes our team will use that summary and send it to like an individual post a demo, right? As to like just highlight some of the key takeaways and key discussion points over the course of that demo conversation, right? And so sometimes it's used externally with our customers. Sometimes it's used internally to share key information with other parts within our company, right? So it accelerates like sales intelligence, I'll say. I think one of the other values of Gong is it has like, it's looking for certain things in the context of like a sales opportunity that gives insight to either our sales team members and or us as sales leaders, that help us understand the nature of where a deal is, so we can plug in and like address, ask questions, whatever, right? So as an example, it'll look for like, hey, this deal has been single threaded, right? I.e. nobody's talking back to us for the last 14 days. Like, what do we need to do here, right? So it provides like some meaningful insights to sales team and sales leaders that just help like accelerate, like, I guess, give us information or insights that are allow us to check in on deals and or be able to share information more regularly. Go ahead.
And it's connected to using Salesforce.
That's correct.
So it's
That's
connected
correct.
to that. So it constantly pulls the data from there, or do you
That's
have to? Okay, so it's integrated, and
that is correct. It is integrated with Salesforce.
So okay, a couple questions.
Sure.
Both with the role playing and with Gong, what have you noticed? If whatever you can share, different since you started using both. Like any interesting observations, or results or outcomes.
Role play, I would say quicker ramp and quicker ramp of effectiveness in our call engagement, right? And well, I would love to be able to give you like a precise, like, hey, I saw our like calls per demo set like went from X to Y. I know it technically has improved, right? Our call to set ratio, but I also just see like a much quicker confidence and capability with our account executives and our BDRs as they ramp into their role. They're much more quickly, I wouldn't say mastering, but like demonstrating proficiency on the phones, right? So that's been a big impact. I would say with Gong, right? Like it does help support efficiency within just communicate, again, internal and external communication. I would say, so we also use it, like it also provides, one thing I get forgotten to mention earlier is it provides like scorecard summaries. So for instance, like on demos, it will like effectively evaluate whether we checked certain boxes in a demo, and it'll give some feedback and insight, which is a great tool, right? To help us just learn and improve from that. And so all of those things have been, I would say, meaningful for sake of efficiency and helping improve effectiveness. I would also say, and I think this, nothing revelatory here, it's, I would say that you can't just like let AI operate on autopilot, right? Like, as an example, when it comes to scoring demos, there are many instances, and I know a lot of my team members would nod their heads in agreement. There are a lot of instances where it's more generous than like an appropriately critical eye might be, right? To like help our team members upskill.
I jokingly call it yes man. It will tell you whatever.
Yeah. You're doing great.
You don't train it to be like, be straight with me.
That's right.
So I pulled this interesting data that apparently, so Gong, back in January, they said that they analyzed 7.1 million opportunities, and they found out that sellers who frequently use AI generate 77% more revenue. So basically, those who use AI versus who are not, based on their data, they generate more revenue, 77%. Again, that's their data from their report. Obviously, you guys are using it. You said they haven't been using it for that long, or how long? When did you guys start using it?
Gong?
Yeah.
January of 25.
Okay, so when you came there, all right, got it. So with AI, it's interesting because you've got a team. Would you say you know, like all of them are embracing using it and playing with AI, or do you think you've got some people who are more embracing it than others? Like, how do you bring, because with all the best AI tools in the whole universe, if people are not using the tools, it doesn't really matter. So what do you notice about how that affects anything? And if you have to get on somebody more than others, like, hey, use this tool, or make sure you use AI for this, or what do you notice?
It's an interesting question. And like the answer is yes and yes. Like, so absolutely. There are folks that like lean into it much more quickly, and folks at varying degrees of like I would say interest and ability.
Yeah.
I would say nobody though has been like wholly like resistant to the use of AI. I think I kind of joked earlier about the awkwardness of role play. There are folks that have been less adopting of the Yoodli tool, right? But as it relates to the AI capabilities of Gong, I wouldn't say there's been necessarily resistance. Perhaps the only level of quote unquote resistance in the case of Gong would be like not perhaps going down the rabbit trail to see like all like the capability, like the full capability of insights and ability that the Gong's AI platform enables.
Yeah, makes sense. So for sales leaders that are listening to us right now, because you guys are clearly utilizing this really well and doing a lot of fun things with it. You provide AI to your clients, with your product, right?
We do.
And so you are, what we say in Russia? We are the bootmaker with the boots. So you're clearly, doing this. What advice would you have for the sales leaders listening? Like, what do you start with AI? Because there's so much noise out there. How do you know which tool to use? I bet you're bombarded with all kinds of different AI things that'll change your life every day. So where would you start?
And for clarity, are you asking about like within the the tech stack?
With the sales department, you are like where would you start? Because it is overwhelming there right now.
Good question. And of course, realize that my perspective is only going to be informed by like what I've had exposure to it, right? And so, of course, like I am certainly not like all knowing about like everything that's out there. I would say that. So, you had just alluded to the fact that like we've made like pushed AI as a like kind of the newest wave of our existing Covideo platform, right?
Yeah.
What I would say that we stress is not AI as like a means of taking over the nature of personalized video, because we believe and know that personalized video engagement is really what drives like impact and conversion metrics, but rather we use AI to like help create efficiency like in the workflows for like the customers that we support, right? And so we're not intending to use it as a means of like replacing people and the personal engagement that video allows. And I only start there because I think that's an important way that we think about how we use AI within our sales tech stacks, is not that we necessarily jump to a place of like, how about AI BDR, right?
Yeah.
I think
abandoning that, by the way. Yeah, right? It didn't work out very well, apparently. So
right, and I think that's because like there is like personal engagement in a sales process is, I think, still really important on both sides of the desk. And so I say all that because if I were going to start somewhere, I would start somewhere like Gong, because Gong is not AI that's replacing the talent and capability and the personalization of like our sales teams. It's like it's helping to make them more effective and efficient in their work. So I would probably start there. Start at a place of like setting up our people to be more effective and efficient in their roles, before we like think about moving AI in the place of our people.
We're almost doing the sales pitch for Gong today, but with their stats, it's pretty amazing. I mean, like how they have the statistics. I know. Let's wrapping this up. What's one question? I mean, you've shared so much gold today. Like I'm already like, wow, this amazing. What is one thing that I did not ask you that I should have asked? So that maybe you're prepared to talk about, maybe you wanted me to ask and I forgot.
Look at my notes. It's a good question. Oh man, I don't know if I necessarily had like just had this like take home, right? Yeah, in reviewing kind of like what I had pieced together in advance, there's not one thing that's on, just jumping out at me like, man, I really wish I got a chance to talk about this. I think as we know, like sales is about people, right? And like as it relates to like building and helping to shape a team, like it's about the people we hire and how we influence and affect and like you said, motivate, but also like help support them in their journey. I do think that, like as we discussed earlier, I think an important part of that starts with like not only providing a clear vision of like what we're working towards, but also making sure that they are defining that clear vision for themselves. Because let's be real, like we can go to a QBR or a national sales meeting or whatever, and man, it's awesome, man. I love this. I'm so pumped up, man. I'm going to crush my goals next quarter. But man, as soon as we step out of that, right, it's like stepping out of a concert or, you know, a church event or whatever, right? We're back into the Monday. The reality is like, it's not exciting. Like the everyday isn't exciting, but it's real. And so we need to have clarity of like what that carrot is. What's my why? What am I doing this for? Because that's what's going to keep us going day after day.
Thanks, Ben. This was a joy to have you on. Come back anytime. And what people can find you on LinkedIn, Ben Slaughter is going to be here in the video if you like what you saw. And we love working with Covideo and with Ben. So if you're in Indy and this sounds like a fun place for you to work, reach out. And anything else you have to say in closing other than follow Ben?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. You've shared a lot of great stuff, and I appreciate you so much. To the moon and back. And I will see you guys later.
All right, great. Thanks, Olga.
Bye.